Good evening. This is CBC Windsor News live at 6, and I'm Jason Vio. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's what's making news tonight. High-ranking officials mark the connection of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. There's also talk of it possibly opening up earlier than currently scheduled, and we'll learn more about the price of tolls. Plus, today, a Windsor man met the first responders who saved his life. Firefighters pulled him out of a burning building and, with the help of paramedics, eventually got his pulse back. Plus, it's that time of year where construction season is in full swing. Tonight, we take a look at how those narrow roads affect cyclists. Well, road work is an inevitable part of summer. While construction and detours can be a headache for motorists, for cyclists, it can sometimes be dangerous. Dale Molnar reports.
Sometimes road work can happen without disturbing the bike lanes, but even then there can be roadblocks. But construction barrels have traffic down to 2 lanes on Wyandotte Street East for several blocks. There are no bike lanes here, and riding in traffic is scary.
So if you're cycling, you're going to have to compete with the cars as well, and it creates a dangerous situation.
Some cyclists are using the sidewalk, which they shouldn't. Cycling advocate Wayne Lessard has been trying to get the city to put bike lanes on Wyandotte Street. To keep safe in construction zones, he has a radar device that tells him if there's a vehicle behind him, putting him in danger.
If I think that a car is coming up behind me in a situation where it's not safe to pass, I'll move out into the roadway so that they can't pass me.
Aaron Photo doesn't drive, so he depends on his bike. He's had some close calls.
There was a day a few weeks ago that I counted about 4 different times where I almost got hit, and I said, okay, I need to start taking a different way to work. You know, I know there's a place that I can think of right now at Tecumseh and Jefferson, I think, where they've got a sign that says, you know, construction ahead, but it's on the bike lane, but it's just on the other side of the intersection.
I think that they should have signs telling cyclists that they can take the lane in these situations, because that's really the safest place to be.
But the city is working with contractors to put detour signs just for bikes in construction areas where there are bike lanes to direct them to a different route.
If someone's going to be doing work in a bike lane or something like that, we want to make sure that contractors have proper signage for the bikes in particular. We're trying to come up with standards for the, a little bike symbol in order to designate bicycles.
On streets like Wyandotte, where there are no bike lanes, Boak says they are trying to come up with ways to detour bikes on smaller streets there as well, but the challenge will be to keep the cars from going there. For now, motorists are being reminded that bikes also belong in these lanes through construction zones, and it's still illegal for bikes to use the sidewalks. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
A major milestone today. Officials gathered on the Gordie Howe International Bridge to mark the completion of the road deck. It's scheduled to open to traffic in the fall of 2025, but some are hinting it could happen sooner. Jacob Barker reports.
It was a party-like atmosphere on the newly completed bridge deck. Scores of media and dignitaries from both sides of the border to mark the occasion.
This project is so much more than a bridge. To me, it represents the connection between Canada and the United States, our largest trading partner and our strongest ally.
Needless to say, this is a critical bridge for our nations, for the city of Windsor, the city of Windsor, city of Detroit, for Michigan, for Ontario, and for the United States and Canada.
About 2 months ago, one of my colleagues stood right in this spot, and there was about a hockey rink worth of a gap between Canada and the U.S. side. Well, now that's been filled in, and that's why the crowd was here today. Also on hand were family of the bridge's namesake, excited to take their first trip across.
I can't wait till the opening day, and I want to get a car that we can put some number 9 flags on and get the Howes out there waving. That's all I want to see.
11,000 people have had a hand in getting the Gordie Howe Bridge to this point, and 13 million work hours have been completed. The current cost of $6.4 billion is about $700 million more than they were expecting to spend, and a fall completion in 2025 is later than planned, mostly due to pandemic pressures put on the supply chain. But today, Minister Fraser hinted completion could be earlier if things go well.
The way that the pace that they're working right now, depending on conditions, create different possibilities, but I just want to make sure that we stick to the schedule that we have agreed to. Should things fall into place, that'd be a wonderful thing, but right now we're gearing towards opening by next fall.
Now that the span is complete, it is considered to be a secure corridor, which is why border officers were on hand and people were asked to bring their passports. There's still plenty of work to be done on both sides of the bridge and on the deck itself.
Here we have to do final surfacing, fencing goes up, barriers, line painting, lighting, etc., and our signage. Building envelopes are complete on our POEs, so we're busy finishing the interiors of the buildings, fitting out furniture systems, commissioning. So that will still take a few months.
You see it coming in before next fall?
I'm committing to fall.
Like the other crossings between Detroit and Windsor, there will be a toll. That hasn't been announced yet, though there was a hint today of how it might stack up.
We are busy reviewing it in terms of economic impact and what's reasonable for the consumer. It will be less than other crossings in the area, and we'll make announcements early in the new year.
One of many announcements set to come as the Gordie Howe Bridge gets closer and closer to completion. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
And while the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities was in Windsor today for that announcement on the Gordie Howe International Bridge, I also sat down with him to talk about housing in our community. You'll remember Windsor wasn't able to access $70 million from a federal fund to help build more homes, and that's largely due to the fact that Windsor City Council didn't want to allow the possibility of 4 units by right on any residential property.
Let's talk about where that actual criteria comes from. It's not a formal requirement to access the fund, but when we actually see the applications that came in, there are so many cities across Canada who are willing to implement that kind of policy, as well as other more ambitious measures that have really raised the bar. So the Housing Accelerator Fund was designed to solicit applications and say, tell us what you're willing to do to grow the housing supply as quickly as you can. And then we compare one city to the other. Right now, when I see growth in housing starts, that's good news. It is unabashedly good news when you see the pace of housing starts increase like we've seen in Windsor. Now, that's being driven a lot by the economic growth that we're seeing here in Windsor. We've seen investments not just in the bridge, but the Stellantis plant, new investments with new trains, new transit systems. Windsor's growing right now, and that demand is contributing to that growth. But let's not pretend the Housing Accelerator Fund is the only policy that we put in place to help facilitate that increase in starts. When we talk to the development community here in the city, they tell us that the cut to the GST has been essential to allow projects to go forward because the math now works for the builders. We layer on top of that tax cut that we put in place, low-cost financing during a high interest rate environment we've seen over the past few years, and we see that there's savings for the people who are actually going to be building homes that are able to go forward.
Because Windsor is doing so well without access to the Housing Accelerator Fund, is there any wiggle room from your perspective for them to access that and allow the federal government to help build on that momentum?
So the door remains open. We've topped up the Housing Accelerator Fund. I understand the city doesn't have plans to make a subsequent application to the next round of the Housing Accelerator Fund, but that's a decision that cities are going to take. If they're willing to submit an application that demonstrates more ambitious systemic reforms that will pay off over the short and long term, they will be able to compete with other cities.
A local veterinarian says there is little need for alarm after a bat in Windsor, Essex tested positive for rabies. She says the bats are not looking to bite people or pets.
Bats, they're insectivores, and they don't kind of seek out animals or people to bite. The main concern is basically when people interact with bats as if they get trapped in their house and you're trying to catch them with your bare hands. Please don't do that. If a bat's in your house, please contact animal control to help remove that from your premise.
Now, we know rabies can be deadly to humans and people should take precautions to avoid being bitten or scratched by a wild or domestic animal. Well, it's not every day a person gets caught in a house fire, let alone gets to thank the people who saved them. For Windsorite Jeff Anger, today was that day. He met the first responders who rescued him last spring. Now, Windsor firefighters responded to a fire at a home on Prado Place last May. They had information that a man was still inside, so crews immediately went in to rescue him. It took crews of both firefighters and later paramedics to get Anger's pulse back. He was taken to hospital, waking up from a coma 7 days later. He remembers little of that fire, but has a second lease on life thanks to the first responders who saved him.
You never know what life has in store for you. And that night I never knew what was in store for me. But without you guys, man, your courageous efforts, I wouldn't be here. And I'm honored to be in a room full of soldiers, full of heroes. The most gratitude a man could ever have, you know? Like, I've dreamt this day since since the 27th of May, I guess, right? But there's nothing more I could want, to share this moment with the people who matter most to me. And I'm so grateful that I was able to meet each and every one of them.
Started working on the patient. They performed CPR for several minutes. Heartbeat came back. They were able to administer a drug and then transport to hospital right away. And the outcome was the patients made a full recovery, and that's why we're here today.
The leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, is in our region today. He's scheduled to arrive at the Canadian Legion Branch 594 this hour, where he's speaking with veterans. It's a private event. We are allowed inside, and Poilievre is not taking any questions from reporters. Earlier today, he did stop by a landscaping company in Tecumseh, talking to employees there. This is Poilievre's third visit to the region in less than a year. Well, it's been 6 months since Windsor's Plasma Donation Centre opened. That's after the Canadian Blood Services closed their entire blood donation centre last year.
Yeah, we've nothing but positive feedback. Everything is great here, and we have, as mentioned, several loyal donors, and we welcome new people every single week.
So far, more than 1,700 people have donated blood plasma. That's the straw-colored liquid in your blood that helps carry nutrients and proteins. It's used in critical medications and treatments, including for cancer and blood disorders. And the demand in Canada is on the rise. With about 300 appointments each week for people to donate plasma in Windsor, the Canadian Blood Services says they're 80 to 85% booked. Chris Potter joins us live now for a look at weather. Chris, I must say yesterday, humidity was very noticeable in the air. Today, much cooler.
And it's going to be very similar, Jason, for tomorrow as well. So if you didn't mind the overall weather conditions today, we had daytime highs just running a touch below normal, peaking at around 26. Humidity levels, instead of feeling like the mid-30s, it felt like the low 30s. And tomorrow, it might not even feel like 30. But it's short-lived. As we get through Friday and into the weekend, that's when we start to get into warmer weather, but beautiful weather as well with lots of sunshine. As expected, just some scattered showers moved through the Windsor area earlier. The bulk of the organized active weather in the form of thunderstorms resides to our east, and that's obviously why Environment Canada has severe thunderstorm watches and warnings out, because it's still ongoing. But for the Windsor area, you remain dry for the most part. Basically, we're having the system clear off towards the east. The warm southerly winds are starting to force its way towards the east. A slightly cooler wind will kick in behind it as high pressure builds in, but it's not significantly cooler tomorrow. It's just a reduction in humidity yet again. In terms of what to expect as we head through, temperatures right now at 25 through Chatham, 22 in London, 19 through Mount Forest, a little bit cooler towards Ottawa, dealing with heavy rain and thunderstorms in the nation's capital. Closer to home, London's at 22, Chatham 25 in Windsor, feeling closer towards 30. And as we step into the day tomorrow, as I mentioned, that's when it will feel a touch cooler. In terms of active weather, what's left over, we're basically just dealing with a little residual cloud cover, kind of these spotty light showers which will wander in towards the southwest, and this is going to continue through the evening, maybe again into the overnight. But as we step forward into the day tomorrow, that's certainly our transitional day. What I mean by that is low pressure continues to clear and high pressure builds in, and that's going to establish more of a clearing trend as we head through the evening into the overnight and into the day on your Friday. And that's going to be the beginning of what I'd like to call a run of sun, because we're expecting lots of it for Friday, pretty much nothing but on Saturday, and almost nothing but on Sunday. It's really Sunday night and into Monday that the weather pattern begins to change. Overnight lows similar to last night, anywhere from 16 to 18 degrees. Once again, cloudy periods for the daytime tomorrow. It will feel closer to 27 to 29 as opposed to the 30s like it has the past couple of days. But like I said, it's short-lived. 27 for your high on your Friday. Lots of sunshine. It might feel as high as 28. Overnight low down towards 16. Very typical for this time of year. Once we get through Saturday into Sunday and Monday and beyond, it does look like a warmer wind will kick in. Nothing necessarily overly noticeable for Saturday with a high of 29. It's going to feel maybe like 31. By Sunday, we get into increasing clouds, but not until the evening and into the overnight. Highs for the day at around 31, feeling like 36. It's Monday and into Tuesday, Jason, that we have an opportunity for showers, maybe a few thunderstorms. But like I said, if you want to make some outside plans, it's not just in Windsor that you're going to have sunshine for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's everywhere across southern Ontario. I know a lot of people are traveling for this last weekend of July, so make some plans. Make sure you're outside.
Yep, perfect weather to do that. And I noticed, Chris, the next couple of nights, maybe we can crack those windows open at night.
Yeah, give your air conditioner a break.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
deserve some money saved.
There we go. Thanks so much, Chris.
You got it.
And speaking of that good weather, we all need some of that me time every day, and you can certainly do that in the weekend ahead. And what better day to do it, though, than today, which happens to be International Self-Care Day. We did ask some locals what they do for self-care.
Every morning I do some exercises. We call it as Sweden exercises. I think for 10 minutes in the morning. I am 58 years old.
Well, I do my usual routine. I do regular exercise and I go out for a walk. I do cycling. So it's just a part of my daily routine.
First of all, I just think positive for myself, for my family, and eat healthy food, doing exercise, yoga, and spend time with family. And the main thing is don't hurt anyone from your heart, because it is the bad thing, because it will come back to you again some days, so it will affect your health also.
Still to come, a scandal involving the Canadian women's soccer team before the Paris Olympics even start. We'll have the latest coming up. The Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rate further to 4.5%. Governor Tiff Macklem says the overall weakness in the economy is bringing inflation down, but price pressures in some sectors are holding it up.
If inflation continues to ease broadly in line with our forecast, it is reasonable to expect further cuts in our policy rate. The timing will depend on how we see these opposing forces playing out. In other words, we will be taking our monetary policy decisions one at a time.
Now, this is the second consecutive interest rate cut since March 2020. In April 2022, the bank began an aggressive cycle of rate hikes as it tried to ease high inflation. Now, the inflation rate fell to 2.7% in June, but the central bank warns that the path back to its target of 2% inflation could be bumpy. Well, the Canadian women's soccer team is at the center of a scandal in Paris over allegations of spying on a rival Olympic team. 2 staff members are accused of using a drone to record practice sessions by the New Zealand team.
First of all, I'd like to apologise. I think on behalf of the leader of this programme, I think on behalf of, I'm ultimately accountable. I think that's why it was really important to me, I think, to take this moment to show strong leadership.
Head coach Bev Priestman has removed herself from tomorrow's Olympic opening match against New Zealand. The COC says assistant coach Jasmine Mander and non-accredited analyst Joseph Lombardi were sent home immediately. It says that Canada soccer staff will be required to undergo mandatory ethics training, and further action may be taken if necessary. Canada Soccer has expressed disapproval and announced an independent review. FIFA, soccer's governing body, has also launched an investigation of its own. 8th ranked Canada is the defending Olympic champion after capturing gold 3 years ago in Tokyo. New Zealand is ranked 28th in the world. Well, still to come, the Earth recorded its hottest day ever over the weekend. How will athletes stay cool during the upcoming Olympics? That story is next. As athletes were making final preparations for the Olympics, the Earth recorded its hottest day ever last weekend. The last games in Tokyo were the hottest and most humid ever and saw athletes collapsing during competition. Heather Hiscox looks at concerns and plans for keeping cool in Paris.
When you arrive here at Versailles, one of the first things you notice is this motif. It's everywhere. Louis XIV, the Sun King, which got me thinking about the sun and one of the big issues for these Olympic Games, the heat. So far, Tokyo's have been the hottest games on record. The conditions for the athletes there were torturous. Remember tennis player Daniil Medvedev saying he was dying on the court? It could be even hotter in Paris. The highest temperature ever recorded in the capital was in July of 2019, 42.6 degrees Celsius. So it's a concern for everyone, volunteers, spectators, but especially the athletes. It's tough to eat, sleep, and train well in extreme heat, let alone to compete and push their bodies to the max. Athletes have been training in the heat to acclimatize. Canadian marathoner Rory Linkletter, for example, on his YouTube channel, he talks about lengthy sessions in a sauna and overdressing for some easier runs in dark colors, tights, and long sleeves. Teams will be pulling out all the cooling strategies: ice vests, wet towels, cold sponges, even frozen balloons to help lower the body temperature. Some Canadian athletes, including Javier Acevedo, Skylar Park, and Aaron Brown, they're using cooling sheets to help get the best rest possible. Organizers might be forced to reschedule some events, as they did in Tokyo, when about 110 athletes suffered heat-related illnesses. They've already been forced to back down from one plan. When they built the Athletes' Village, they didn't install air conditioning. They went with a natural geothermal cooling system in the interest of reducing power consumption. Canada was one of many countries that said no thanks and vowed to bring their own portable ACs. Paris has since installed 2,500 units. Now, they might not need them just yet. The forecast for the first few days of competition has temperatures in the mid-20s, which would be ideal conditions. As the Sun King himself might say, long may they reign. Heather Hiscox, CBC News, Versailles.
Two major wildfires burning in Jasper National Park in Alberta continue to threaten the town of Jasper. High winds and dry conditions persist, and officials expect the fires will continue to grow.
There was significant fire behavior and fire spread. We do anticipate that conditions are going to be similar again today, and we will work and do our best to suppress this wildfire and keep it away from the community based on the fire behavior.
Now, the two fires burning to the north and to the south are within 10 kilometers of the town and have a combined area of more than 11,000 hectares. Officials say there is rain in the forecast, but it likely won't be enough to help contain the fires. The town and the park remain off limits, and more than 10,000 residents have been forced to leave. Most left Monday night and went to BC. 245 backcountry campers have been picked up or located. Well, the extreme heat wave in Egypt has thousands of people heading to nearby beaches, and that's leading to overcrowding in some popular spots. This is a beach in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. You can barely see the golden sands under all of those overlapping umbrellas. Locals say the number of visitors to their city has been growing each year. Another reason tourists are flocking to the city. Many find Alexandria cheaper and a lot more affordable to visit. And as we've told you, the CBC is the official broadcaster for the Summer Olympic Games, and to celebrate, CBC Windsor has limited edition pins to commemorate the Paris 2024 Olympics. To get one of your own, we want to hear about your favorite Olympic memory over the years. Now, you can text us that memory at 519-984-2051 or email us at windsor@cbc.ca, and we'll draw some winners at random throughout the games. Remember to put Olympic memory in the subject line. Well, that's it for us here at CBC Windsor News live at 6. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, though, for news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks again for watching. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.